Right, 2 o'clock. Good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. As you may have heard by now, officers have concluded that further work is required on the first application, item 5, Ashover, and that it should be deferred. I have agreed to this, but I would like them at the appropriate time to explain the reasons for it. This means that we only have 2 applications to consider, item 6 Claycross and item 7 Pilsley, as well as the report on planning appeals. However, I have agreed to take item 7 Pilsley first. Right, live stream, are we now on? Yes, thank you. The first item is apologies for absence. Have we received any in advance?
We've got Councillor Gare.
Councillor Gare?
And we have Councillor Lidgett for Councillor Cooper.
And Councillor Liggett standing in for Councillor Cooper. Yep.
Councillor Foster.
And Councillor Foster's putting his apologies and Councillor Clough standing in. Okay, thank you. The second item is declarations of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests and or other interests not already on their register of interests in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have any interest to declare?
Chair, can I declare an interest please in Lily Bells? It's actually sitting in my ward now and I will remove myself from the meeting at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rouse? Our third item is declaration of predetermination. Any member who cannot determine an application solely on the information presented to committee at the meeting today is asked to declare that they are predetermined on that item on the agenda and to withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have any predetermination on the agenda to declare? Councillor Hancock.
Chair, it's not a declaration, but in the interest of transparency, I am aware that several friends and other members of the council do frequent Lily Bells, and have actually signed the petition. So it doesn't influence me one way or the other, but I think for the sake of transparency, it should be noted.
Okay. Thank you for that, Councillor Hancock. We now have the minutes of our meeting held on the Tuesday, 3rd of September 2024. Are we happy that they are correct record and can we agree them by acclamation? Do we have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move them, Chair.
Yeah, all those in favour? Thank you. Thanks colleagues, that brings us on to the main business for the meeting, our applications. Before we start, I would like the clerk to explain for the benefit of members, speakers and those watching on YouTube how we will deal with them.
Thank you, Chair. Before setting out the procedure for considering the business this afternoon, just a reminder to members that if you wish to speak, you only need to press the button once. Your mic will be activated when it is your turn and then turned off for you. The Chair will introduce the application, then ask the planning officers to deliver a brief presentation on the application to members and highlight any late representations that have been received. The late representation report has been published on the Council's website and hard copies have been circulated to you. After this, the Chair will ask any speakers to address the meeting. There are 7 speakers today. They will each have 3 minutes to put forward their views. There will be a reminder given by the clerk when 30 seconds remains. At the end of the 3 minutes, members of the committee will have an opportunity to ask the speakers questions, if necessary, to clarify any points they have made. After the speaker has addressed the committee and answered any questions, then they will be allowed to remain in the meeting, but they will not be allowed to participate further from this point. The Chair will open up the meeting for questions to officers, a debate by the committee and a determination on the application by a vote. The votes will be taken using the voting facility on your microphones. Finally, members, this meeting is being live streamed and a recording will be placed on the Council's website. Please note that others may choose to copy this recording. Thank you, Chair.
Right, okay, colleagues, as mentioned earlier, the officers have asked that this item, item 5, Ashover, be deferred for reasons that I'm going to ask one of the officers to explain now. Over to you, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As members will have noted, there was a report placed on the agenda for a dwelling house at Ashover. Subsequent to that, we've received the representations of Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, who raised a couple of outstanding matters, Chair. The applicant was keen to address those and sought officers' agreement to put to you a deferral this afternoon. We believe that's the appropriate course of action. It will allow those outstanding matters to be addressed and for us to evaluate them in association with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust and report back to you in due course, Chair, and therefore we've sought deferral of the application this afternoon and advised all interested parties accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, now let's move on to our next application, which is, as mentioned previously, we're taking item 7 before item 6. So this is going to be NED /24/00521 FL Pilsley. In line with our normal practices, I'm going to ask the planning officers to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have a point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any other questions about the process until the end? So I'm now going to hand you over to Alice Lockett.
Thank you, Chair. You're right, Adria. There's not been any late representations on this application, so I'll just go through the presentation. This application is for the construction of a 2-storey, 5-bedroom detached dwelling on land adjacent to the bungalow, Station Road, Pilsley. The application is for a self-build dwelling in which the applicant intends to live. The applicant has agreed to a legal agreement to secure this. The site is located within the settlement development limits for Pilsley on an unmade lane which leads from Station Road, Pilsley, seen here in orange. Next slide, please. I think. Oh, sorry. Previous one, sorry. The lane is privately owned and serves a number of dwellings and agricultural and equestrian uses. Some of the plots to southeast of the application site have had permission for dwellings. The majority of the site has an outline planning permission for a dwelling. However, it seems that an error was made on that application and the site is in fact 1.5 metres wider than the red line submitted at that time. As such, a new full application was required to utilise the whole site. Next slide, please, thank you. This is the red line location plan, and next slide. And this is the proposed block plan. And this is the site layout plan. The private amenity space to the rear meets the requirements of successful places. There is adequate space at the front to park 4 cars, which meets the guidance of the Highway Authority for a dwelling of this size. Next slide, please, thank you. The proposal is for a 5-bedroom house over 2 storeys. The applicant proposes to live in it with 2 other generations of his family. There is space for a live-in carer if that is required. The following slides are a selection of those shown at the site visit yesterday. This shows the lane where it joins Station Road. This shows the entrance to the site and the view back towards Station Road. At this point, the lane is a single track. Next one, please, thank you. This is the view onto the access track from the site looking to the west, and this is looking east. As you can see, there's a mixture of dwelling styles in the area. It is considered that the proposed dwelling will meet the requirements of successful places and policy SDC 12 with regard to adequate parking and amenity space, and the proposed dwelling will not impact light to windows of any neighbouring properties, including those proposed on sites to the east. Due to the mixed nature of the street scene, it is considered that its design is appropriate. There are no technical reasons why the application should not be approved, and therefore officers are recommending approval. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alice. Right, colleagues, we have 4 speakers on the application, the first of which is local ward member, Councillor Andrew Cooper. They will each have 3 minutes to get over their points and will be informed when they have 30 seconds remain. you can ask them to clarify any matters that they have raised, but remember your questions should only relate to the points which have already been made. So I can hand over. So when you're ready, Andrew, I think you know the procedure.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I call this application into committee as I was concerned about several things. One was the size and scale of the house. One was the design and the proposed build, and which I believe is out of character with the area. And the main thing that really concerned me was, although it's just been stated that there's 4 car parking bays, for a house this size, I think that that's significantly less than what will be required. And if the applicant would consider it, would she be willing to look to improve that number, and also provide a space to turn on site so you could actually move out of the sites forward. As you can see from the lane, it's very narrow. Obviously I understand the application site has an extant permission for 1 dwelling, so the principle to build on this site has been established, so I fully understand the planning officer's decision to grant this application. As you are probably all aware, this is a very sensitive area. As the committee previously turned down an application for something slightly different at Garden House. Neighbours quite rightly are concerned about the size of the house and wary of what intentions might be further down the line, which I know are not relevant to this application, and any future changes would need further planning permissions. But with this in mind, what I would say is if members are minded to grant this application, I would ask that the committee ensure that the legal agreement already mentioned in the report is signed and adhered to, along with all the relevant conditions before granting the application. I would also make a further point that further conditions are applied. There appears to be nothing in there about the times of work, the days, whether Saturday or Sunday are acceptable to be worked on, and these do need to be made quite clear to whoever's building it, should it be granted. Also, once again, delivery times I believe need conditioning, so neighbours are aware about when that's going to happen. I'm also aware that there are a couple more speakers. They may also have other conditions they may wish the committee and officers to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Does any members have any questions for the speaker? No? Right, if you'd like to retake your seat then, please. The next speaker is Lynn Booth. If you'd like to come up to the seat, please. If you press the right hand button on the microphone when you're ready to speak, you'll have 3 minutes. Whenever you're ready. Thank you.
I have been nominated to collectively express the views and concerns of all those who have put in a joint representation on the planning portal dated the 15th of August. After 18 months of upset and stress trying to stop a supported living HMO application at Garden House, it seems we're here again to ask for your support. This 5-bedroomed house application is almost opposite the 6-bedroom Garden House, but the application today is sited on a much smaller plot with less garden and parking than Garden House, which was for 6 adults and which was refused by the council and the inspectorate. Initially, this application quoted 8 adults, which included an elderly person and a carer. This would mean 4 separate little family units over 4 generations. When the council challenged the applicant in regards to the statement the house will be suitable for unrelated people in the future, the applicant said there had been a misunderstanding, then worryingly for us also stated that they may or may not live in the house, which set off really big alarm bells. It sounded like yet another absent landlord renting rooms for profit. What has happened now to Garden House is absolutely disgraceful. It's also immoral. It's been heartbreaking to witness it, and we want to avoid a repeat of that scenario. The whole design of this house, 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, Rooms on all, doors and windows on all the sides. Certainly looks, feels and sounds like a house built to rent out rooms. If there is no owner of the house residing there once built, then it will just be another absent landlord rental business venture. Whether the rooms are rented to family and their partners or unrelated people, it's still renting rooms, and that's not the same as somebody wanting to build a dream home to live alongside and look after family members. This type of rental operation will impact on our rights and our amenity with more noise, disturbance, issues with bins, parking and trespass, which we've had with the last one. An approval would change the character and hierarchy of the area, which you all recognise when you refuse Garden House. The inspector supported your decision and quoted, "It is more commercial and incompatible with the quiet residential character of the area. Also, the proposal would represent significant increase in traffic noise and disturbance. Also, developments must add to the overall quality of the area." We have seen the council's conditions, we've seen that there's going to be a legal agreement, but we're unsure of the detail. We ask you for your support if you are inclined to approve this, that the conditions approve the following. The owner must live in the house once built. Other occupants must be direct descendants of the owner. Refuse bins must be kept within the boundary, not visible and emptied and not left on private property as they are at the moment with Garden House. A new application must be submitted before any approval given to rent out rooms to unrelated people or any type of care facility attachment. Importantly for us is that all the conditions are monitored and adhered to and corrective action taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Viz. Do any members have any questions before she takes a seat? No, if you'd like to retake your seat, thank you. The next speaker we have on this item is Katie Goodwin. If you'd like to take a seat, please. Also an objector. Three minutes when you're ready.
Is it on?
It is on? Yeah. When the red light's on, you're on.
Thank you. I have been nominated to speak for all the people who have put in a joint representation through the planning portal on the 15th of August. Our last visit here was Garden House application, so we are asking for your support again. This private lane is narrow, unmade, with no tarmac or pavement, no street lighting and a dead end. We have suffered already from the trespass and blockage of the lane. It is the issues around the proposed parking that will create the most issues for us all. This is a very large house which leaves little space for a turning point with only four parking spaces. Cars are not fully contained within the boundary. Cars will be reversing out into the lane. It is so dangerous on the lane, and the inspectorate stated an increase in parking demand increases the risk of reversing. With the site almost opposite Garden House, traffic from both sides turning into a narrow, unlit lane, again dangerous. There's been one accident already with the car reversing from Garden House. There will possibly be 8 adults who can own a car. It is difficult to get anywhere without one in Pilsley with a poor bus service. 4 generations with their own friends visitors needs more parking on this private lane. We have no street parking at all. This narrow dirt track lane was originally created to access a few allotments. There are already 6 family houses approved. It is not feasible, sensible or safe to allow even more large houses with a large amount of occupants on such a lane. It will take at least a year to build, and where are all the workmen going to park daily? Where can all the materials and machinery be stored on site with little frontage in a large house? What happens when large deliveries arrive? A single file lane where no one can stop on the lane without blocking us in. It is easy to access your home on a public road, impossible on this lane without planning for construction on the scale on this narrow lane. So if you are inclined to approve this application, we ask for the help with the following conditions. 1. A reconfiguration of the site to allow a proper turning point and more parking spaces. 2. The applicant must produce a site construction plan showing where workmen will park, machinery and material will be put, time slots for large deliveries, working hours allowed for construction, i.e. 8 till 6, Monday to Friday, Saturday morning 8 till 12 and no Sunday working. As the construction will take place halfway up the narrow section of the lane, it stops everyone above that point being able to get to and from their homes or access the back of Rouse Street. We will be blocked in and out, and everyone won't be able to enjoy any quiet time, and that could impact for a year or more, which is not acceptable. 3. The applicant repairs any damage to the lane incurred by the construction of the house at their own expense. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do any members have any questions for the speaker? No? If you retake your seat. Thank you very much. The next speaker on this application is Peter Hartill, the applicant. If you would like to take your seat. You have 3 minutes when you're ready. You press the right-hand button on the microphone. Button on the right, yes. That's it. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the plot already has outline permission for a dwelling of some description, so I had asked the committee to set aside the many valid objections which emanate from a dwelling being constructed on this lane, as it has on the other numerous full planning consents granted further along the lane. We presented to the planning officer a plan and elevation of the dwelling we had in mind. She made a detailed critique of what was required to satisfy the many aspects of planning policy where it was found wanting. We believe that we have addressed all those issues, and indeed the planning officer, it appears, believes that we have done so. The changes primarily concerned the interests of the owners of the bungalow to the west, the garden plot to the east, and the residents of number 15 and 16 Rouse Street, whose rear gardens the plot adjoins. These owners are not party to any of the objections. Parking is provided for 4 cars. If our family moved in tomorrow, there would be 6 of us and we own 3 cars. We don't expect this to change. Moreover, the cars parked behind the gate will be behind a 1.8 metre wall and will be not visible from the lane. Any relocation of the house to accommodate more parking would, in my opinion, raise an objection from the residents of number 15 Rouse Street. The position of the house on the plot and its floor level of 1.3 metres below the level of the lane means that, in combination with the front wall and gate, only the upper floor will be visible from the lane. Much of the objection appears to be grounded in a fear of the use as an HMO at some future date. This is not such an application. Any future owner, when I am dead, may make such an application, and the committee will make a decision on this at the time. However, I am not intent on fostering bad relations with my future neighbours, and therefore I would be content if a condition of the approval was included to preclude such an eventuality. This is all I have to say in the matter. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hartill. Does anybody have any questions for the speaker? No, if you want to retake your seat.
Yes?
Yeah, you retake your seat, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm a little deaf.
Can you just turn the microphone on? Right, that's all the speakers on this. So I'm now going to, colleagues, we're now going to have the opportunity to put questions to officers about the application. As always, I would like to keep this part of the proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points you are not sure of. Once we have done this, we can then have our discussion about the application based on what we have heard and what we have read. Do any members have questions for officers? No. Councillor Elliott.
It is one just for Adrian, really. One of the speakers spoke about conditioning it for direct dependents only. Is that possible?
The issue about conditioning who should occupy a house would normally lie well outside your remit. However, if you were concerned about the potential use of the property for a house of multiple occupation, which you've heard a number of the speakers, including the applicant, reference, you could specifically take away the change that there is permissible under the use classes order to allow a change from a dwelling house to an HMO for under 6 people. So that would be an otherwise permitted use. So if you were concerned about that point in terms of the belt and braces on that matter, you could take away that right if you consider that was important. That would provide the certainty that perhaps some of the speakers spoke about and which the applicant himself alluded to.
I think, Chair, that is my concern, that a lot of the speakers are speaking exactly about that, and maybe that is their concern. You know, should it be successful, I certainly want to see that happen.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to pick up on the point that's been made by a couple of speakers with regard to the lack of conditions around the works themselves being undertaken and timings and stuff. And is there a particular reason, or have I missed them? Because it does seem a little bit less stringent than we would certainly have on a larger development anyway. And I think, given how tight it is, I can understand the concerns that the neighbours have got.
Sorry. Yeah, we wouldn't normally put those conditions on such a small development. That's usually for, you know, multiple houses. The Environmental Health Officer didn't request them, but whether we can, if committee think it's important because of the location, then that would be something that we could do.
Just on that point, Chair, if members did determine that was important. Just on that point, Chair, if members did think that was an important issue, the normal restriction would be, as you've heard, in terms of 7:30 to normally 6 o'clock Monday to Friday, and then normally 8 o'clock to 12 noon or 1 o'clock on a Saturday morning. That would be normally, and that would, as Councillor Hancock mentioned, that would normally be on larger scale developments, but that would then preclude work and deliveries, so deliveries of materials, etc., to the site outside those times.
Councillor Williams.
Right, thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's also concern about the parking. I've dealt with I've dealt with properties like this, with the broken road and all the difficulties, and I've heard these arguments taking place before. I think the opportunity should be taken to look at the location of that house to see if you can move it back, see if it does impact anybody else, just see if there is that scope to increase the amount of parking there. I think that could be an interesting thing to be looked at. Thank you. I don't know.
May I just come back to Councillor Jones on that, Chair? That's been something that we have considered in some detail as officers, and the provision of the 3/4 car parking space is, in our view, acceptable for a dwelling of this size. And whilst the speakers have mentioned the single track nature of the road and potential for the inconvenience of that being blocked, as officers we believe that actually works in favour of the application, in that it wouldn't allow for parking off the site. Parking would need to be on the site, or else the road would be blocked, and that would be inappropriate and inconvenient for everybody. So we don't believe that would happen in this case. So we are satisfied that the level of parking and the provision of on-site turning and or use of the lane wouldn't be to the disadvantage necessarily of other users of the lane, Chair.
All right, thanks for that. No further questions? Right, thank you, officers. For that, this leads on to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we heard, what we think and what we want to decide. But before going any further, I would like the clerk to remind us about motions. Over to you, Nikki.
Right, can I remind members that a motion must be moved and seconded before a vote is taken? If a motion is to be moved which goes against the officer recommendations, then you must give the reasons for doing so. The reasons should comprise the relevant planning issues and be supported by evidence as necessary. If a motion to reject officer recommendation falls, then it does not mean that they are automatically approved. Rather, you will need to take a positive decision through a further motion that is approved by the committee. Can I also reiterate the point that Chair will only be prepared to take motions at the appointed time and that members will be reminded of this if appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. Right, colleagues, having heard everything today and the officer recommendations before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions. Councillor Liggett.
It's not a motion, it's a question. I was just thinking if we did want more parking, would it not have to be a fresh application?
I think that was a question for officers earlier.
If you, Chair, as a committee are of the view that for whatever reason the parking is inadequate, then you would, in my view, need to refuse the application this afternoon. The only provision way that we could secure further parking on the site would be for a wholly new scheme, because it would by definition require the dwelling to be set well back, further back into the site, and we have already discussed that with the applicant, and it would have knock-on impacts in terms of garden area and how it may impact other considerations, Chair.
Right, thanks for coming back in with that, Adrian. Right, I'm now opening the floor to motions. Again. No? Okay. Right then, colleagues, that I suggest that we, I'm going to put something on the table that we actually... Sorry? Oh, Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, I'm happy to move that we go with officer recommendations, but with the additional conditions in line of the HMO provision that Councillor Elliott spoke about, and also putting conditions on with regard to the
your microphone's gone off. Okay, so we have a motion in front to accept that we go with officer recommendations, which Councillor Hancock stole my thunder, because that's what I was going to suggest. So we'll put it to the monitors for voting. Right. Is everybody happy with the way they voted? Yeah. Okay, we've got 8 for and 2 abstentions. The application has been successful with those recommendations from Councillor Hancock as conditions. Thank you very much. Right, we're now moving on to the application for Clay Cross, which is item 7 on the agenda. NED//24/00502/FL. In line with our normal practices, I'm going to ask the planning officers to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have a point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? So now I want to hand you over to the officers to give the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've had a couple of late wraps, so one from Councillor Gillett and another from the planning agent, which is an addendum to the vacant unit study. These are considered and discussed in the late wraps document and do not change the conclusions we have drawn on the application, which remains a recommendation of refusal because the proposal is contrary to policy WC2. So the application is for the change of use of the existing building from its current use as industrial to mixed use, including a cafe and a hot food takeaway at Unit 10, Upper Mantle Close. So this shows the aerial view of the site, and you can see it's surrounded by other industrial uses. Next slide, please. As I said, it's a very busy industrial site, and the vacant land study has not identified any vacant units at this location. The building immediately to the east of the site is the car body workshop. Being in the heart of the industrial site, it is surrounded by other industrial uses. Next slide, please. This slide shows the town centre in blue hatching, the principal employment areas in solid purple, and the general employment areas in purple hatching. Principal employment areas provide strategic sites that are appropriate for industrial uses, which may otherwise find it more difficult to find a suitable site because of the nature of such uses. So allowing a use to occupy the site which does not conform with the policy potentially denies other industrial uses the opportunity to establish and flourish and could introduce compatibility issues. The proposed use is such a non-conforming use with policy WC2. Next slide, please. This is the location plan. Next slide, please. This is the existing site. Next slide, please. This is the proposed site, which shows the layout of the building, the ramp, and the parking spaces. Next slide, please. These elevations show the building before the new use and alterations begin. Next slide, please. These elevations show the external alterations, including the access ramp, new doorway, and kitchen flue. Next slide, please. These are a few photos of the site itself. This is just taken from the road, Upper Mantle Close. Next slide, please. This shows the area where the parking would be provided. Next slide. And just some more photos, just taking you through so you can understand the unit. Next slide, please. The conversion of the building was underway when officers first visited the site. Next slide, please. This just shows a wider view. You can just see down the side of the building there where the flue would be proposed. Next slide, please. On our second site visit, the cafe takeaway was trading from the premises with what appears to be all but the external flue complete at that point. The proposal is contrary to the policies of the development plan, in particular local plan policy WC2. Officers consider the material considerations put forward in support of the proposal do not outweigh the conflict with local plan policy WC2. For the reasons set out in our report, i.e. these benefits could be achieved through the reuse of identified vacant sites within the town centre, or potentially other sites that are not within a principal employment area. Also, the apparent high demand for these industrial units, demonstrated by a lack of vacant units found in the submitted vacant land study, plus the absence of any marketing of the property to the appropriate market and at appropriate price, or any marketing at all for that matter, weighs heavily against the other material considerations. Accordingly, the proposal is recommended for refusal as it is contrary to local plan policy WC2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Right, we have three speakers on this application, the first of which is the applicant Liz Bell. They will each have 3 minutes to get over their points and will be informed when 30 seconds remain. You can ask them to clarify any matters that have been raised, but remember your questions should only relate to the points which have already been made. So I'm going to hand you over to Ms Bell. You've got 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Liz and I'm the owner of Lily Bells. I've had my little business for 5 years now and I've had to move to new premises for no fault of my own. I'm a Claycross girl from a Claycross family whose mum and dad had a bread shop in Claycross for 45 years. I have 9 fantastic ladies that work for me and my customers absolutely love them. We have a really happy and safe environment for my customers as most of them are over the age of 65 and vulnerable adults who love to come every day for a hot meal and socialise with my girls and other customers. My little cafe is the heart of the community for a lot of people in our area, and I also do a lot for Claycross Community and Claycross Social Centre events. I make Christmas dinner every year for all the members. I also do the catering for Derbyshire Police Federation, Derbyshire Fire, the NHS and many more large businesses in and around Claycross. We also do a lot for the Alzheimer's Society, which is very close to our hearts. We use local products from local businesses in Claycross and support local businesses. If 2 local businessmen hadn't come to my rescue, I don't know what I would have done. They gave me the opportunity to save my business and save the jobs of my girls and redevelop a property that was stood empty. The new premises were stood empty for 2 years and were a blank canvas, and I've turned it into a warm, homely environment and used local tradesmen to do all the work when most of them thought I was mad. The support I've had from the people and the businesses in Claycross is absolutely amazing and I can't thank them enough. I've worked really hard over the last 5 years to build my little business up from nothing to what it is now. And if this application does not go through, I will lose everything I've worked for and I will go bankrupt, as I've put all my money into the new premises. Most important to me is that my lovely girls will have lost their jobs that I have fought so hard to keep. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions? Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. Just one. Amongst your customers, are some of the other users on the industrial estate regular customers too? Yeah, no, thank you very much.
I have one question actually, just regarding employees. In the report it states that you've got 7 employees. So that as in, you've had an increase in staff, have you? Is they part-time, full-time? What's the ratio on that? Can you just,
Sorry, 1 full-time, 1 part-time.
Right, okay, and what about the other 7 that you already employed?
I have 4 full-time and the rest are part-time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Got any further questions? The next speaker is local business owner Lee Barnes, who will be speaking in support of the application.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. You've got
I'm here today speaking as agent, not speaking as agent, but as a concerned local business owner. I'm Managing Director of a Claycross business based on Coney Green. My team have used Lily Bells for several years for their lunches, and as a business we've used them to cater our larger meetings. I was very upset to hear of the unpleasant way in which Lily Bells were evicted from their base at Jackson's, and upon hearing that I was keen to help them not only save the business and the multiple jobs they sustain, but to help preserve the wonderful community that Liz and the team have engendered. I love visiting Lily Bells. There's always a lively atmosphere in there, and the regulars who have formed a wonderful community. They've always got some great banter flying about, and it's an absolute pleasure to witness and hear the laughter. As some of you are aware, I'm a very passionate supporter of the local business community in Claycross, and I volunteer a significant amount of my time as chair of the board for Claycross Town Deal. And through that exciting regeneration project, North East Derbyshire District Council is supporting the economic growth which will have an enduring effect on the prosperity of the town. So whilst the creation of this exciting new food and beverage development should rightly be applauded, it is imperative that the authority does not turn its back on the existing businesses that contribute to Claycross' diverse offering. It is from these existing businesses that further growth and consumer choice can be nurtured. The importance of a business like Lilybells to the town and the wider district should not be underestimated. They have an extensive local supply chain. They support other local businesses by providing a facility for their staff to use local to their employment base, and as previously mentioned, a vital community benefit. When viewed as a whole, as a benefit to the town and district, rather than through the narrow focus of a planning policy tick list, it is glaringly obvious to anyone who cares to take the time to lift their head from their desk and take a look that the social and economic benefits of having Lilybells in this specific location significantly and demonstrably outweighs any restrictive policy argument. So a question I pose today to members as a concerned business owner is, would you rather see a local person provide an excellent offer to Claycross and provide employment for 9 people, or a unit that has been empty for 2 years, which at best will provide employment for 1, maybe 2, with no other ancillary benefits?
Thank you. Do any members have any questions for the speaker? No? Thank you. Will you take your seat? Thanks. The next speaker is the agent, Callum Retford.
Thank you, Chair.
Whenever you're ready, you've got 3 minutes from when you start. Thanks.
You've just heard from the applicant about the important role her business plays in supporting not just the local economy and providing employment, but also a local community. I would now like to set out the material considerations which members should consider in support of this application. The recommendation for refusal is based solely on the application conflicting with one single restrictive policy. This policy protects principal employment areas for Class B2 and B8 uses, such as industrial and warehouse development. However, the local plan clearly states the Council will support proposals that contribute to the economic viability of wider employment areas and the local economy. We have presented a case to officers which demonstrates that this proposed change of use is ancillary to the wider light industrial units on plot 10 of Upper Mansell Close. On the matter of employment, Liz had to act quickly to save the 7 jobs which would have been lost if she could not find an alternative site. In fact, with this new site, Liz intends to recruit 2 more staff members, which we've already heard, an increase in employment, if you will. Therefore, in this matter, the application seeks to support and retain jobs within the district, and it contributes to the wider local economy by supporting a wide network of local bakers, butchers and greengrocers. To demonstrate that this site was the best option, we conducted a vacant unit study, which considered alternative premises. No suitable alternatives were found within the town centre or within the less restrictive general employment areas due to the issues such as insufficient floor space or unsustainable rental costs. The study did find a significant supply of light industrial units currently being constructed and marketed within the town, and therefore this proposal can in no way be considered a detrimental loss to the supply of B2 and B8 floor space. It's also worth noting that there are no technical objections to this application. Derbyshire Highways confirmed that the parking provision will be sufficient to handle the cafe's transient customer base. So just to finalise, we encourage members to reflect on the information presented today. Consider the balance of weight that should be afforded to the material considerations supporting this planning application, especially when compared to the weight placed by officers on one single restrictive planning policy, which, in our view, neither promotes placemaking nor aligns with the Council's stated commitment to support existing businesses and their overall contribution to the local economy. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions for the Speaker? No, if you'd like to retake your seat, thank you. Can we just get the microphone turned off? Colleagues, you will now have the opportunity to put questions to the officers about the application. As always, I would like to keep this part of the proceeding focused on getting clarity about any points you are not sure of. Once we have done this, we can then have our discussion about the application based on all that we have heard and read. Councillor Liggett.
Right, I've probably gone in at the wrong place yet again. But basically, I'm in complete agreement with the three speakers. And these policies were made at the old Claycross. Claycross has changed an awful lot. Claycross Town Centre has moved, even before we carry on with all the new development. You are within, I would like to say spitting distance, but I better not, so I'll say stone's throwing distance of Tesco's, Pets at Home, CMC motorcycles. They aren't industrial, and it literally is, as far as that building across there is to where we are now.
Can I just, have you got a question for?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. My question is, Adrian, can you not see that, you know, that area is changing? These policies need to, the units need to be declassified, if you like, because it is now, that area is a complete mix.
Turn mine off.
Chair, we're just seeking to advise members on the basis of your own planning policies as set out in the local plan, and the site lies within the area defined, as Stephen has said earlier on, within the area of WC2, which is a restrictive area which seeks to secure those areas for the industrial and commercial activities which probably wouldn't be appropriate elsewhere, and to retain the land availability for that level of industrial commercial activity. And if that's bled away through gradual loss, it will undermine your local plan policy, and the time to redefine your areas would be through a local plan review and another local plan, another iteration of that. The other issue is that the policy WC2 is very clear in restricting the uses on these sites, the B2, B8 and EG elements, and only will be deviated from if the other ancillary uses are genuinely ancillary to the main use on that site. And the main use as set out in the report in this instance is as the cafe, and it wouldn't prejudice the future function or viability of employment uses elsewhere. So it's not an either or, it's an and in our view as officers chair, the use isn't ancillary to another use on the site. The primary use is as a cafe, and also in other instances, as we've set out in the report, we do think it may impact on other potentially industrial uses by the provision that you've got a food outlet in effect on the site. Now, having said that, Chair, the issue is that you should be guided by your development plan policies. That's your primary consideration, that's your statutory responsibility, and you should only deviate from those in the planning balance if there are other material planning matters that outweigh that. And you've heard a lot this afternoon about the other benefits that are perceived to come from this use. Now, I would always urge caution on you to place weight on specific personal issues to a particular activity, because they could easily disappear. If you were to grant permission this afternoon, in this instance, you would be granting permission for a cafe to be on the site. You wouldn't be granting permission to the applicant and all the issues that you've heard this afternoon, and that instance could go overnight. The site could be sold on, another user could come in there and operate it differently with none of those social and economic benefits that you've heard this afternoon. So I would always urge caution, Chair, in placing significant weight on the personal elements that are put forward to you this afternoon. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, we're seeking to advise members on your planning policies. It's for you to determine whether there are other weighty material considerations that outweigh that policy consideration.
Okay, can I just confirm, has it been empty for 2 years?
I believe so. I believe so, yeah.
Councillor Cheetham.
Yeah, sorry, I think I'm going over similar ground really. I was going to ask a question about how sort of rigid and all-encompassing policies like WC2 are, because I've got experience of working in industrial units. I used to work at Sheepbridge and I now work at Rotherham. And in my experience, these little food outlets and cafes are an absolute godsend to the people who live there, to the people that work there, sorry. So I think we need to sort of consider the amenity of the people that work, like the speaker that was just speaking. So whether that falls in with what you were saying about considering the overall amenity and weighing up the various planning considerations, I don't know, but I just wanted to ask the question.
Chair, it's for members to consider all the planning issues. Your responsibility is to determine applications in accordance with the development plan, unless there are material planning considerations that outweigh that. The issues that you need to consider around that are for you to, in effect, come to a conclusion on how much weight you place on them. But you should be mindful that if you were to grant permission, for example, this afternoon for this instance, you should be able to clearly identify why you would grant permission for this use and for the reasons why you would do that, and why, faced with similar circumstances elsewhere within that WC2 area, for example, you maybe seek to hold a line on your policy. So you must be able to identify considerations that you would bring to the table this afternoon that would differentiate it potentially from other similar circumstances that you might be faced. So I would ask members to take account of that as well, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions, officers? Right, thank you to the officers for that. This leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we have heard, what we think and what we want to decide. But before going any further, I would like the clerk to remind us about motions.
Thank you, Chair. Can I remind members that a motion must be moved and seconded before a vote is taken? If a motion is to be moved which goes against the officer recommendations, then you must give the reasons for doing so. The reasons should comprise the relevant planning issues and be supported by evidence as necessary. If a motion to reject officer recommendation falls, then that does not mean that they are automatically approved. Rather, you will need to take a positive decision through a further motion that is approved by the committee. Can I also reiterate the Chair will only be prepared to take motions at the appointed time, and that members will be reminded of this if appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. That leads us on to, I'm going to open the floor for debate. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm somewhat disappointed that we can't find a way around the WC2 after what I've heard from you, Adrian, as well. I personally can't sit here in a planning committee and put someone out of business, and this isn't personal or thinking about somebody's personal circumstance, but you put a shop in the middle of a housing estate so people can utilise it for getting food. You put a cafe in the middle of a huge industrial estate so people can do the self-same thing. And yes, I have used Lily Bells in the past. and hopefully it will continue to be used. And if it's been sat there for 2 years and not been taken up as a WC2 property to be used, you've got to ask yourself why not. So surely it's better serving Clay Cross and keeping 9 people in jobs than it is us, as some of the speakers have said, you know, not being able to go around this policy. That's all I got to say about that.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else want to contribute? Well, I'll add to the debate. 'Cause I think this is a difficult one for us all to decide, to be honest. I can see points from both sides, but we've also got to consider our local plan, our adopted local plan, and the policies that we've approved at this council, which have got to add weight to our decision, and to go against it without considerable material consideration, which I've not heard anybody come up with a real material consideration why. I think the officers have explained most things quite well why they don't agree with the arguments that have been put forward. So, in balance, I'm struggling with it, and if anybody else has got something to add to that, because I don't think it's an easy decision, bearing in mind as local plan. Councillor Hancock.
Are you open to motions yet, Chair?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were summing up there. So, right. No, it's all right. I'll come back then later.
Councillor Clough.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a difficult one, admittedly. We do have restricted policies in place, WC2. What I'm struggling on is the fact that this is of high benefit to the community. We are looking to vote on this particular application. On this particular application, I think the social and economical benefits are outweighing the WC2 policy. Yes, okay, we've been reminded that moving forward, there's a potential that could change, but we're always advised that we shouldn't be really looking forward. We are thinking about the actual application that we're voting on now, and I actually think the social and economical benefits have been met and outweigh the policy. There are groups of people using this cafe that are vulnerable, elderly. It also benefits the community, the industrial community that are in the area, and I think that for me outweighs the WC2 policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clough. Right, I am, if nobody else wants to enter the debate, we'll now move on to the next part. I'm now going to open the floor to motions. Councillor Liggett.
I'd like to propose that we go against officers' recommendations on the grounds, especially that Steve just said.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock.
I'll support second Councillor Liggett. I think, and yeah, I'm using a very liberal interpretation of our policies again, but I think the fact that it does serve the estate itself, the industrial estate, it would loosely fill the ancillary development, and I think we have got, yes, it's probably not the most robust argument, but I think we have got grounds to say it does fulfil policy and to go against officers' recommendations on that basis. So I'll second Heather's motion.
Right, thank you. We've got a proposer and a seconder. Sorry, Councillor. Adrian?
Not yet, Chair. No. just on that, Chair, just bear in mind the motion that's been put before members, whether any particular conditions that you would wish to see on any approval that's granted this afternoon, or whether you'd be happy to delegate that to myself, Chair, in consultation with yourself and the Vice Chair. That's the only
yeah. Is there anything that can be put on it that if this business is to leave that we could revert this back?
If you felt it was so overriding, Chair, you could put a permission on that restricted it to the applicant only, for example. The only other issue that I'm minded to mention to members is that in the application form does set out specific opening hours that the applicant has applied for, and I would at least suggest, if you're minded to approve the scheme this afternoon, you attach a restriction on opening hours. But if you felt, as has been put forward, that the particulars of this business are so weighty in your consideration, you may wish to put on a personal permission for the applicant only, and upon that being lost, then another application to either amend the condition or do something else with the building would be something that you would then be in control of.
How do people feel like that, about that as a condition? Yeah, acceptable. Okay. Right. We're now going to take that motion to the vote with the conditions that have just been outlined. Thank you, members. That's 8 for and 1 against. Oh, sorry, 1 abstention. The change of use has been granted. Right, thank you very much for your attendance. Right, then members, we now move on to the item 9. Now call on the officers to explain the next report, appeals lodged and determined.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. First of all, after a brief lull, we've started receiving more appeals again, which is something that we'll need to deal with going forward. So there's only been the one decision that's been received in the last 4 weeks, and that's in respect of the tree preservation order appeal, as you can see in the papers, and that was dismissed. And I think that does show the benefit, Chair, of having specific and fantastic arboricultural support within the team to provide the advice on these matters, and we're grateful to David for his input into this and all tree matters. So I think just it's an example of that, Chair. Also, in respect of the training that we talked about, I'm not seeking sympathy, Chair, but I've been away for a couple of weeks, so I haven't been able to move that forward. But as we spoke about this morning, we're hoping to arrange that appeal event in the next 4 to 6 weeks in conjunction with governance team.
Thank you for that, Adrian. Does any members have any questions on the report? Do members agree to just note the report? Okay, thank you. Right, colleagues, I have no urgent business. I declare the meeting closed, and thanks for your attendance.